Cool. I'm Jay. I'm head of development at Action Rocket. And yeah, I'm basically talking about how we can get rid of those white lines in Outlook. So when I talk about those pesky white lines, what I'm mainly talking about is Outlook. And I know you've all experienced it, and it's those little white lines that appear. And so I wanted to give a bit of context as to why I would have some experience talking about this. And back in 2021, me and another email developer, Ben Tweedy, wrote a big, long blog article about it, trying to explain how you could fix white lines. But also, since then, everyone's contacted me, asking me, sending me lots of different scenarios, different pieces of code, why it's done it, how it's done it, and also managing a team of developers. I see the white lines come up quite a lot in pre-testing before it goes live. So that's why I wanted to hopefully share exactly what I was experiencing with everyone else and why and how it works, and you guys can banish white lines completely. So firstly, an imposter. So this white line is actually on iPad iOS. And iOS and iPad white lines are very similar to Outlook, but slightly different. And the cause of these is actually just because of a scaling an element in the email. And it's actually really super quick to fix. So if ever you open an email on the iPad and it looks like there's a little white line or something in between them, it just means that one element in your email is far too wide. So you just need to go in there, find the one that's too wide for that viewport and fix it. But that gave me an idea as to, is it scaling that's causing white lines in Outlook? So why do white lines occur in Outlook? There's lots of versions of Outlook, and the main one that causes this, that as far as I know, I haven't seen it in the others, is that it is the ones that use Microsoft Word as a rendering engine. So some versions of Outlook, which are on Windows machines, use Microsoft Word. And those versions are the ones that are normally a downloaded desktop app on Windows machines. And all of those email clients on the screen there all use MSO or Microsoft Word rendering. So this comes all the way up to Outlook 2021 and also includes things like the Windows 10, 11 mail, which comes for free, and then also Outlook 365, which is a desktop app. So what exactly are we talking about? Sometimes it's lines between sections of an email. And this could be two different modules, or like where you've finished a table and starting the next table. For this one, the fix was a little bit more elusive, and it was actually an image that was causing it to cause a white line. And there's going to be I'm going to give you lots of examples, but then explain why they do that in a minute. But so basically, all I did was change the width of an image from 570 to 568, and that fixed the white line. So that was such a small detail and only 2 pixels. So that is why these things are so hard to fix. The second one is in buttons, or in these little kind of offset sections. There's why would the line appear here out of all the others? And in this instance, it was just an odd number for the padding. So in this case, it was padding 13 pixels and then 60 pixels on the left and right. And just by changing it to 14 pixels, that fixed it. So that is literally just one more pixel added on top and bottom. So again, a matter of pixels is causing this white line, and often finding that particular element that is causing the issue is the hardest part. Now this one was a bit more difficult, and it randomly appeared in the middle of an email. So it wasn't between tables, and it didn't seem to be related to anything specific. So I spent a little while trying to figure this one out. And all of the rules that we had previously set, and anything that was in the original blog post or in any blog post I could find, or Stack Overflow, or any other resource I could find, would not fix this issue. And we had to go with a really like a random fix. And that is why I wanted to share it. So the guidelines that we currently follow, which I think you have seen on every single blog post out there, and hopefully is a nice summary here, is trying to keep all your numbers even or divisible by 2. Keep those tables nice and short, so don't put everything in one big table. If you keep the tables nice and short, we tend to find that there's less of these white lines appearing. Try and remove all borders on tables and images by default, so either having border 0 on a table, or by having border 0 set on an image or a reset at the beginning, or if you're using images, presetting them to display block or vertical align. And that changes them from display inline to display block, removes a little bit of extra margin that's added, but also removes that possibility of having a border. And also, when we do create emails, we want to make the images as high res as possible. And some people call these retina images or double size images. And we need to ensure that those are also divisible by 2 in both width and height. But understanding why these things happen is something that I want to try and figure out. And I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to get straight to the point. It is because Microsoft Word uses points for measurements, not pixels. And it's this conversion is what causes a problem. So what are points? Points are used in printing. So if you were printing out a letter and using physical paper to print something out, points give a definite 100% size of a letter, which is why Word is based on it, because it's made for creating documents and editing them and formatting them specifically for print. However, a pixel can change the size depending on the screen resolution, things like that, and that's why we use them for web development. So the problem comes when all of our emails are in pixels and they want to be converted to points. I did think about adding a fix that said just make all of your emails points, but I don't think that's actually realistic. No one is going to suddenly change all of their designs to points. So we need to figure out how we can work with this conversion and what happens. So how does Outlook convert your code? Taking a simple layout here, we just wanted to take the numbers directly from, I inspected it in Parcel to get the width and the heights, and then just did a straight conversion to figure out what happens. So does it take each element as it goes through? So one element is the image itself. It's a double size image, so it's been squashed down to 600 pixels by 400. 600 divided by times by 0.75 is 450, and 400 by 0.75 is 300. So that's a really nice rounded number. Hopefully that shouldn't cause us any issues. However, the last 3 are what causes us problems. So the title there that has a font size of 22 and then increased, it caused it to have 38.25 points as a height. The paragraph, again, has 47.25 points, and then the button itself had an odd width and an odd height. So by taking all of these together, how can we deal with all of this that's happening? And is this actually what Outlook does? Or does it take each element and round them up? Because we know from developing things ourselves and trying to put decimal points into our emails to see if we can get things to look exactly as we want them to be. And unfortunately, it doesn't listen to points. So you can't have 1.5 points or 1.75 points or anything like that. So does Outlook actually take each element and then round it up as well? May do. So we've taken this, rounded every single element up, and then got a different width and height. Or maybe it takes the whole table. So does it just take the whole table and then leave it as a point and then fix that later, and that's what our white line is? Or does it actually take the whole table and round that table up as well? So by doing all of these different measurements, all just by inspecting, taking it, trying to see it in Outlook, you can see that the width has stayed consistent, but the height has changed depending on however different way you try and figure it out. And ultimately, Outlook doesn't have it has a set flow on how it works it out, but it doesn't have a set way of producing a rounded up or a rounded down from all the experiences I've had. So which of these previous outcomes could result in a white line? Some of the answers already. Outlook always rounds up. It takes each table into account. So it doesn't actually measure each element. So in the previous code that I had inspected, I didn't have a separate TR and TD for every single element. The image, the H1, the paragraph, and the button were all linked on top of each other using straight on top of each other using semantic HTML. There wasn't separated. So how does it do that? And it turned out it's not actually point numbers that's causing it, but it's odd numbers. So it's not broken ones that cause the white line, it's odd numbers. So actually the answer was all of them, depending on how I put them in through the testing that I did through the inbox previews in Parcel, all of them actually created a white line. And that is why from all of the tests and all of the development everyone's done and everything that everyone shares, we have so many issues with this. So how can we kind of prevent this, and how can we figure things out? And I've come up with these new guidelines to follow, which can hopefully help us mitigate it as much as possible. But unfortunately, I just don't think we're actually going to fix it 100% of the time, all of the time. So the new things to think about are keep all of your numbers even, but divisible by 4. So the reason we're doing divided by 4 is because the conversion from pixels to points is 0.75. So that's always going to be like 3/4 of what you've got. So if you've created something and keep all of your numbers divisible by 4, you should always come up with a rounded number. You should never have a point something. So that sounds like something simple that you can follow, but maybe it's not that simple, because really, like, if you think about it, when you've got a design that comes to you from a designer, or you're creating something, or you're cutting out an image, are you going to definitely guarantee that everything is going to be divisible by 4? When you've got external people creating assets and things, can you do that divisible by 4? So yeah, that's always difficult. Keeping tables short is definitely still in there. So as I mentioned, Outlook definitely takes a table to figure out what number it works itself out. And every single element and every single time I've seen a white line problem, it's been related to the table. So you can always narrow it down to the table itself, which is causing a problem. One of the debugging methods that I tend to use with this is to take all of the email and delete things as much as possible until I end up with just the smallest thing that recreates the problem. So if you've got a large email and you're seeing a white line, delete as much of it as you can by keeping the white line, and you'll narrow things right down. Remove borders on tables and images. That's the same with the images. But this last one, which is the retina images, try and get them to be divisible by 4. So that is another thing to kind of think about. If all of those things don't work out for you, then you want to find some fixes. And I'm going to give you some fixes and why they work, so that you can think about why you would use them. A fix that someone came up with ages ago, which is crazy, is just make all of your map background and modules white, and then you fix that white line. That is not a practical fix, but it could be a fix for things like transactional messages, automated messages, password reset messages, any messages that don't have to have a big loads of color, lots of different color sections, etc. Use just one background color, keep it white, and then those lines won't cause an issue. Obviously, it doesn't fix everything, but it might fix something. Add or take away a pixel. I would say that this is my go-to when I'm trying to fix something, but this has kind of come up when I know why things are causing an issue. And as I've shared before, it's the different way it's working out the heights of everything. So why would you like find the specific thing that needs to take the pixels that you take away or add? Basically, start from the outside. So if you think of all of your elements within your email, maybe you've got some text. If you've added a padding onto that text, and then you've added a margin outside of that, start from the outside and work in. So with buttons, it's generally quite easy. It tends to be padding that is not quite right. And also remember that you've got 4 numbers of padding that you can adjust. So although the majority of white lines are horizontal, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is caused by horizontal padding. It's the way that Outlook also figures out the width. So if it's trying to force the width to be something wider or shorter, that could affect the height. So all of the numbers are available to you to change for padding and margin on all 4 sides. But I always start with the bottom. So I start from the bottom and add a pixel or take away a pixel, depending on what the number is. The first button that I showed you obviously had 13 pixels on top and bottom. So in my head, to make that even, it was simple to just add 1 pixel on top and bottom. However, yeah, it could be anything, but I always start from the outside and work in. So if you've got odd numbers on the outside, make them even, make them divisible by 4, work your way inwards until you get to the text. You could add something that is literally just for Outlook. So this is a problem that is only on Microsoft Outlook word rendering Outlooks. So why not just focus your fix on those and forget about the other email clients? I think we've all been there where we've found a fix for something, added some code, gone back to test all the other previews, and all of a sudden you've broken something in somewhere else. And that's an endless cycle which carries on. So think about it. Why not just fix Outlook? And there is a whole category of these fixes. And on the blog post that we originally wrote, there's like 5 or 6. I've narrowed it down to 2 that I found that fix most of the majority of things. And this one is a really short piece of code which just adds one TR with a TD that has a font size of 1 point and a line height of 1 point. So as I mentioned before, the reason you're getting that white line from all the testing I've done is because Outlook is coming up with an odd number of points. So it might end up with 423 or 427, and it just needs that extra point to expand the table enough so that it hasn't got to force its own pixel in there. So to do that, we've hidden our piece of code in the middle in a MSO comment. So the first line, which is if true, all of that is doing is saying if we are opening this email in Microsoft Outlook that uses the word MSO rendering engine, use the code in here. So this stops it affecting any other email client out there. Then we just add a TR, a TD, and like I said, font size, line height of 1 point, and adding a non-breaking space. So this won't cause you to have loads of room. You're literally adding a 1 point or 0.75 of a pixel line to your Outlook, and that should just balance what the problem is. Another thing you could do is add a break. So before we added a whole row, that's a whole load more code. But adding a break with a non-breaking space afterwards forces Outlook to also add like a new line. And by adding a new line, you may just even out the numbers. Because if you think about it, from a paragraph, if you've got 2 lines of text and they've got line height on top of them, but if you have 3 lines of text and it has line height on top, then adding those 3 numbers together is going to be different to adding 2 numbers together. So if the line height on 2 lines is 18, that would be 36. If you added 2 more, that could end up with 44, 54, that kind of thing. So you're going to be changing it all the way through. So maybe adding that break will just automatically add the extra space needed to stop that one line. A good thing about this is also it's really short and really small. So hopefully it won't affect, we all know about the limit in Gmail of only having 100 to 102 kilobytes. So we don't want to add loads of code. Like I'm not suggesting you add a blank empty TR with a non-breaking space to every single table. You should just be able to add just this small snippet where you see a problem, and that may fix it. I would love to tell you that there is a document-wide code fix. Unfortunately, there isn't. I have scoured the internet, scoured Stack Overflow posts, old Litmus community forums, Email on Acid forums, Email Geek Slack. All of them fix majority of problems. Every now and again they fix things. They also cause other problems. Some of them say to preset TRs as line height 0, font size 0. That causes other issues with accessibility. Things like that you hope you can add to the head of your email that will fix absolutely everything. Unfortunately, there isn't one. So we've trialed lots of them at Action Rocket over the years by just adding them as we go along to see if we can use it and it will stop all of our problems. But there's always an edge case that causes a problem. So unfortunately, there isn't one that fixes it. So how about this random line in the middle? How did we fix it in the end? We use this TR snippet that I used before. But I really wished that we had reached for it earlier. So it took one developer, after reading the blog post, talking to us about things, and it took him about an hour, 2 hours to go through all of these elements, make sure they were all in the all even. We tried divisible by 4. We tried changing elements. We tried adding a pixel, taking away a pixel. We tried lots of things, and then in the end, after about 3 or 4 hours, we fixed it by just adding this. And if I'm honest, I really wish we hadn't spent 3 to 4 hours just trying to fix an Outlook bug that we saw. But it meant that it gave us a large amount of learning as to why it was causing this bug. And so it was a valuable learning for both me and the developer that was working on it. So definitely okay, but yeah, unfortunate that it just got that way. Other white lines do occur that aren't horizontal, such as vertical white lines. So this one is one that I don't have as much experience with, but definitely thought I should include. And it's when you create stacking context by using direction, right to left or left to right to try and stack elements in an order that isn't the order that you've placed them in the HTML. It's a bit of a workaround that we've used to kind of stack things and things like that. So in order to do that, the bug was recorded way back in 2021. I'm sure it's been around as long as Outlook's been around, but on the email bugs repo, it was recorded in 2021. And the fix every single time this comes up with is just to wrap another table around it. I hate this fix, and it is a fix that is my go-to fix at the very end when I've lost all of my tether with everything that's going on. I just nest another table on it, and all of a sudden Outlook fixes itself. I really don't think that you should always just nest a table just to try and fix something. And as Sarah is saying in the chat, right to left is not the best way to kind of do this stacking context. If you are using that, there are other more accessible ways that you could do that. However, if you are using it, or it's in a development system that you're using, or a design system, then if you're seeing the white line, then wrapping a table around it and moving all of the padding that is on the original table outside to the next one removes the white line. But all of these are very specific to like a one-off email. I definitely say that I work more often on one-off interactive emails and things like that. But what a lot of my team does, and I obviously am in charge of, is these big, massive email design systems. Obviously, when we hand these over, they may not be going to email developers that have the experience that all of you now have. So they may not have the fixes in their back pocket. So why not try and give some design guideline rules to begin with to try and kind of mitigate that problem? And that is what I've gone for. So use numbers divisible by 4. So a common one here is font size. Everyone kind of spouts the 14 pixels is the minimum for accessibility. I haven't seen that written anywhere, and I don't believe that is true. I always say go for 16 pixels. And 16 pixels in this instance is also divisible by 4. So why not switch from 14 to 16 pixels, and automatically you could have solved nearly 90% of your white line issues. Keep all of your modules in their own small table rather than having one big wrapping table. Yeah, that's just pretty simple. Like, don't add lots of rows with different modules in. Add each module as their own 100% width table and just include them like that, and then just stack table on table on table for your modules. And that is no matter how you're developing it. So if you're developing it with ghost tables, then have modules in ghost tables and stack them on top of each other, rather than having a ghost table that wraps absolutely everything. Try and break it down. And try and define the sizes for images so that users know what size image they should go for. Ideally, you'll have images specific for email. I know from working with every single agency and brand out there, they don't actually have set sizes of images, and often a CDN is completely full of random size images, so it's not possible. But if you can put guidelines together, try and just add them in the guidelines to say, please make the height and width divisible by 4, and that would save us a lot of issues with this white line bug. But I hear some of you shouting, I have to use a WYSIWYG editor, or what you see is what you get editor, where you drag and drop things. And I know that you can't touch the code. Some editors don't allow you to. Maybe you need to export it to deal with the code. But a way you could try and address it is by, you're not going to be able to specifically target Outlook, but what you can do is add a breaking space with nothing below it. And then the way to do that would be within the editor, you can add a new line just by hitting return. And then there's actually a keyboard shortcut for a non-breaking space. Shout out to Ben Tweedy who created this and found this out for me. Basically, you can hit Option spacebar on a Mac or Control Shift and spacebar on a PC. And then that way you can add a non-breaking space. So you could add a break just by hitting return and then a non-breaking space. And then all of a sudden you've added that little extra gap, which may stop that white line. So that's a possibility there. Julia messaged on Twitter and said, could you add something specific to MJML? Ultimately, MJML in the background uses exactly the same code as all HTML. And unfortunately, there's no specific, like I said, document-wide fix. However, if you wanted to include a fix in MJML, then you can just use the MJ text module, like element. And because that doesn't pass the HTML, you can stick anything in there. So you can just stick any of the fixes that we've done before inside MJ text, and that will fix the problem. But ultimately, what does the future look like for us as developers? Are we going to have to deal with this Outlook bug forever? The support, originally when it was on the Microsoft forums, it's been there since, I think 2016, that there was a bug and no one's fixed it. So we know Outlook are not going to fix it when they're using the Microsoft Word rendering engine. They're too busy focusing on other things. So what is going to happen? As Ollie will talk about much more tomorrow when he's going to talk about the future of email coding after Outlook, we know that the One Outlook is coming out, which doesn't use Microsoft Word rendering engine. Everyone will breathe a sigh of relief when that happens. However, we know at Action Rocket that our support document says that we support email clients as long as Microsoft do. And all of the previous versions of Microsoft Outlook have been 10 years for it to work. So for 2013, we only retired it last year. So because there is a Windows Outlook 2021 which uses Microsoft Word rendering engine, there is a chance that we would have to support this until 2031. But with all of these fixes and all of the things you're going to hear about totally throughout the whole of Parcel Unpacked, you should definitely look at your audience and who your audience is and think about what is your priority. So if you're a big fancy brand that is targeted towards maybe millennials, is B2C, young people, they're always on their phone, iPhones, etc. If that is the thing, then maybe no one's opening it in Outlook. So should you spend 4 hours fixing that Outlook bug? No, you probably shouldn't. You should forget about Outlook and focus on your audience. So look at your ESP, see what it is, and then look at your ESP, find out all the different email clients that is your, like, where you're sending, and if Outlook is a big one, then deal with it. But if it's not, maybe just forget about the old Outlook and ignore what's happening and go with the new email techniques. And I'm sure Ollie will expand on this much more. Cool. That was it. That was everything I had to say. If you would like to message me, you can email me, j@actionrocket.co. I love to talk about email dev, as you would imagine, and email j_ on Twitter, or X, as it is now.
Wow, I learned a lot, and I'm not even a developer, so I can't imagine how the developers and the people who sit and code more than I do feel with this. We do have so many questions, way more than we will be able to answer in this next couple minutes, but I'm going to pull from the top voted here. The first being, let me just move myself to the side. We have a question from Emily, and you did cover this a little bit, but which versions of Outlook are the most problematic, or all of them?
A lot of these come up in Outlook 120 DPI. So that's the slightly more zoomed in version for people that are not using the regular 96 DPI. However, it's actually all of them. They just seem to pop up more on the Outlook 120 DPI than the others. So yeah, I would do that. But when testing, always just pick the latest Outlooks. You don't need to support Outlook 2013. Don't select that in your previews. You don't need to anymore.
Okay. Outlook 2013, no longer. And how about a question from Vinka here? What about using odd percentages? Example with 83%.
Yeah, so the percentages would be converted into points as well. So that is also part of the problem. One of the other things that I was going to go over but thought it might be a bit too much was, like, when you're setting line heights, for example, if you have a line height that is a percentage of 150%, but your text is maybe 14 pixels, then that means that the line height is 21 pixels. So that means that you're setting it at an odd number. So all of your working outs, whether it's width 83%, try and work it out at the set width that you have as your desktop width, or the width that's going to be shown on Outlook. So if your main containing table is 600 pixels, I don't know what 83% of 600 pixels is, but it might not be an even number, and it probably isn't a number divisible by 4. So that could cause an issue. So yeah, think about when you're using percentages as well, that what that would convert into pixels, and then again what that would convert into points afterwards.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. No, we only got around to 2 questions, but please feel free to pop into the...
Yeah, I'll answer them all in the chat before I go.
So many.
Definitely.
Yes, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Jay. I hope that everyone learned just as much as I did. And it seemed like they did. The chat was popping off.
Cool.
So
Thank you.
please give everyone their thanks to Jay for presenting this fantastic topic. And thanks so much for being here, Jay.